Good afternoon and welcome to the 19th Annual Jewish Film Festival of Fairfield County. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nancy Schiffman, and I'm the Associate Executive Director of Development and Signature Programs at the Stanford JCC. The Jewish Film Festival of Fairfield County has a long history of bringing current, award-winning films to the Fairfield County community, addressing themes of Jewish heritage and history, relationships, values, Israeli society and culture, and so much more. When it became clear that convening in person would not likely be an option for this season, we quickly pivoted to a virtual festival. And because of a wonderful, dedicated festival committee, co-chaired by Jennifer Kaufman, Debbie Lee, and Lisa Popper, all of whom I'm deeply grateful to, the show does indeed go on. During this continuously challenging time, when all we crave is community and being together, we are grateful to be creating community here. Thank you all for being a part of that. The JCC serves the community in so many ways and continually seeks to respond to the needs that arise. But at the core of it all, at the heart of it, it's the people, the relationships that are built and sustained for years. Even though we may not be able to be with each other in person, the feeling and sense of connection continues. And it's through virtual programs like the Jewish Film Festival, our book and author series, online fitness classes, as well as in-person workouts at the fitness center or in the pool, or our J-Cares food drives, and other volunteering opportunities in response to what our community needs is what bonds us and reminds us that we're still part of a family, the JCC family, and it continues to be our virtual and in-person home away from home. I'd like to express my sincerest appreciation to our sponsors, whose generosity makes community possible. I'd like to especially thank the Friedman family and Garden Homes Management for their continuous support of the Jewish Film Festival since its inception 19 years ago. A special thank you to AJC Westchester Fairfield for their sponsorship of the festival. Please join us this next week for the AJC-sponsored film Crescendo about the Israeli-Palestinian relationship through the eyes of young musicians, followed by a valuable panel discussion with AJC experts. The film that closes our festival is a drama, When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit, about a family fleeing Germany in 1933 during Hitler's rise to power, all from the perspective of 9-year-old Anna. To learn more about our festival films or to register or become a sponsor, please visit our website, www.stanfordjcc.org/filmfestival. The Stanford JCC and the Jewish Film Festival is proud of our ongoing partnership with the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County, together offering many meaningful programs, but especially in commemoration of Kristallnacht. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Elisa Kaplan, President of the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County, who will say a few words. Elisa?
I seem to be muted.
You are with us now, and we are glad of that.
Okay, so good afternoon. My name is Elisa Kaplan, and I'm president of the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County, and I bring greetings from the society to all of you here today and to the film festival. About 8 years ago, Marcy Schoenfeld, Vice President of Education and Programming, and I sat down with Nancy Schiffman. Do you remember in-face meetings? That's a thing of the past, which we hope will come back soon. And as Nancy said, we decided to find a way to commemorate Kristallnacht, which was 9th, 10th November 1938, and to enhance the Jewish Arts and Film Festival of Fairfield County. And so we started out with a film called Hiding in Plain Sight, the story of Sarah Miller. And here we are today, years later, in a wonderful partnership. Today, we're here to co-sponsor the film Boxing for Life, the story of Noah Klieger. And this is particularly appropriate for the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County. Noah Klieger A story is really an oral history made into a documentary. And our mission at the Society is to tell the story. And one of the ways we do it is through oral histories. We are very proud to say that we have over 250 video oral histories in our archive collection locally here in Stanford. If you want to find out more about that, please contact us. So as I said, our mission is to tell the story. And Noah Klieger reminds us about he sums up his life in three beautiful words. It's all a result of angels, miracles, and luck. So I wish that for each of you here today, that your life is filled with angels and many miracles, and that you're at the right place in the right time to have good luck. Congratulations on a Jewish Arts and Film Festival of Fairfield County, and to all the hard work of Nancy Schiffman and the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Elisa. Thank you. And I also wanted to thank our community sponsors, Congregation Agudath Shalom and Temple Bethel of Stanford. And thank you all for joining us. It really is a wonderful way to commemorate Kristallnacht, to be together, to view this very poignant film and have a wonderful discussion. What an inspiring film this is. And we are excited for the opportunity to speak with our guests today. If you haven't seen the film Box for Life, it is available until midnight tonight. And if you know someone who might enjoy the film, they can still register on our website. Before I do introduce our guests today, I want you to note that your video and your audio is turned off and the chat function is disabled. We welcome and encourage any questions and comments at any time through the Q&A feature typically found on the bottom of your screen. With that, I am thrilled to introduce you to our guests today. It's my honor to welcome Yuri Bereta. Yuri is a film writer, director, and producer, and has produced and directed films since 1987. Since then, he's directed and produced many documentary films, such as Born to Fly, Exodus: The True Story, The History of the Land of Israel, and Box for Life. His films have been shown in film festivals worldwide, and he's won several awards. Box for Life won Best Featured Documentary in the 2019 Ramsgate Film Festival in the UK, and Best Documentary Feature Theme Award in the 2019 Overcome Film Festival in the US. We are also very fortunate to have Iris Lifshitz Klieger and her husband, Ellie. Iris is Noah's daughter, and like her father, Iris is a journalist. For 37 years, she's worked to correct consumer injustices as a consumer reporter and researcher, raising awareness around social issues such as childhood violence, teen and alcohol drug addiction, suicide among soldiers, the welfare of the sick, helpless seniors, those in nursing homes, and no surprise, Holocaust survivors. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this afternoon's discussion, Stanford's own Brian Krifsher. Brian is a former past president and longtime board member of our Stanford JCC. Professionally, he spent 20 years on Wall Street before retiring at the age of 40 to devote his full-time energies to his lifelong passions for teaching, coaching, and community work. Brian is a high school basketball coach and is the founder and president of Stanford Peace Youth Foundation, which uses the game of basketball, formal academic support, and mentoring to positively influence more than 1,000 local area youth. Brian is also a longtime board member and former global chairman of Peace Players International, which uses the game to bring together children and communities in conflict around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome Yuri Bereta, Iris and Ellie Lifshitz Klieger, and Brian Krifsher. What a wonderful afternoon, and to see all of you. That is fantastic. Thank you for all being here with us. And at this point, I'd like to turn the floor over to you, Brian.
Well, thank you, Nancy, and thanks to everyone for being part of this. Iris, Ellie, obviously, your presence on the call on the Zoom means the world. I've had the opportunity to watch the film that Yuri did many times now, and each time I get inspired anew by your father and father-in-law, and just the presence and humility and decency that he brought throughout the process. Yuri, obviously, we've had a chance to talk, and there's a lot beshert in this whole set of in your film, as well as in my connection to it, given my lifelong passions for basketball and belief in many of the themes that you've expressed in your work about Noah. So I'd like to begin with a statement that was made in the film, which was occasionally, not often, heaven or destiny or both grant an ordinary life far from ordinary. I found myself in uncommon places and situations, taking part in historic events. So with that, Yuri, maybe just some recollections to start with about the work and process of getting to know Noah.
Well, I've met Noah around 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, when I made the film about Exodus, the ship Exodus 1947. And in the research that I've made between all the participants and survivors that was aboard the ship, I arrived to Noah. And when I interviewed him and I heard his story, I was amazed. And I say it's an amazing story. Maybe I'll do a film on that. And then we started to film the film Exodus, and Noah got a small part in the film, and he was very angry at me. Say, why did you give me so small part in the film? I said, Noah, don't worry. I will make a film just on you. And that's how we finished it. And really, when I finished the film about Exodus, I started the research and to produce the film about Noah. That's how I've met him.
Terrific. And Iris, maybe along the same lines, if you don't mind, just obviously your dad passed a couple of years ago, and at the ripe old age of 92, and so you were blessed to have him for so many years. Maybe some just reflections on your part.
It's almost 2 years that he's not with us. In 13 December, it will be 2 years. It's, for me, it's like he's still here, especially in a COVID time, in a Corona. And every day I ask to myself, if my father, Mr. Noach Klieger, was in life in this situation with this epidemic in all the world, I wanted to know every day what the sentence that he will tell to the guys in the newspaper or Uri Boreda. I think he will do this little small with the hand and say, this is nothing, what we got, what we passed in the Auschwitz terrible camp. We can pass everything. So you have a coat, you have food in the frigidaire, and you have a house to stay at home. So COVID is nothing. And Holocaust, my father, when I was a little girl, since 5 years ago, when I was 5 years, he always say the same sentence. I was curious all the time to ask him what is the number on his head, because he was not so friendly to tell me stories when I was so little, but he doesn't have any choice with me because I was insisted to understand what's this number mean. And that was the beginning to tell me the stories in his way, that it will be with a happy end every time when he say a story, tell me some of his miracle. Because when I was a child and to listen his stories from a little child, it was like every time it was finished with good and like a hero, like a Superman. So that was the beginning of the Holocaust for me. But when I got younger, and I was going with him to lectures and every school and army, when he spoke to children in every place. I drive the car and he was, I was leading him to this every time to listen. And when you listen again and again and again, it was a lot of again that I listened to his story. And then I understood that he used to say this sentence: the Holocaust, we cannot explain. I can just tell it. And that's what he did
Yeah.
until the last of his 2 days before he died. He's still writing the newspaper his
Just-
last article. And yes.
Let's, I mean, that's a terrific segue
Just
in a
to
lot
add
of.
something,
Yeah, please, please, Uri.
just to add something, Iri said that he told his story. This was my problem making the film, because he told the story so many times. He did it exactly the same word, the same way. We went, we were, it happened to us. I say, no, Noah, not us, not we, I'm, me. You have to tell me what happened to you, not to all of you. And that was the problem that I managed to solve it later on by taking him to the places when the story occurred.
Well, that's an excellent segue. And if you don't mind, we'll go in that direction. You know, this is a story about an amazing life in its own right. And it, in some ways, would be amazing if it didn't have any connection to the Holocaust. And yet this is a Holocaust story too. And so how did you, Uri, when you thought about the two, the story of the man and the story of the Holocaust, how did you manage to capture both, and how did you think about that?
Well, when I heard Noah's story, immediately I recollect the film Forrest Gump. And for me, Noah was the Jewish Forrest Gump. And that's how I designed the film. I designed a film as a teenager that went from event to an event in the 20th century, what happened to the Jewish people this time, and every time he was in the middle of the story, and every time he managed to went out alive from the story. And that's how I built the story, that it will become an adventure film that is also part of the adventure is being in the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Because for Noah, being in the Holocaust was not a terrible thing. You say, it's a thing that passed. It enriched me, and I will tell about it till the end of my life, but it was a part of his life. The thing that he was most pride with was not surviving Auschwitz. It was being a crew member in the Exodus ship. For him, it was the main important thing of his life, being a crew member of the ship that created our nation, Israel. So for me, building the film is the adventure of a Jewish teenager in the dark ages.
And yet so much of the film is focused or at least connects to the Holocaust. How important was it in telling the story that he go back to Belgium, that he go back to the streets of France, that he go back to Auschwitz? And how did you blend when you thought about the on location elements of it, but also what is in his diary and the narration from his diary versus his own recollections from his own mouth? You know, how did you look at that when you were putting together the film? Because it's a really fascinating mixture of techniques.
Yes. Well, first of all, the narrator that speak in the first sentence as Noah, a young Noah, I took an actor, Israeli actor, and I told him in the audio studio, now you are Noah. You are not narrating it, you are acting the part. So every word that the actor said was the word of Noah himself. I didn't invent this word. It was exactly what Noah said in his memories. So the actor, when you see Noah writing his story, it's exactly the words of Noah. And that's how I managed to build Noah telling the story, filming, temporary filming, and using archive to show the drama. And that's how I built it.
And the archives, where did you get those? Because there couldn't be firsthand footage of Noah, and yet it really connected well to the story itself. So how did you go about that?
Well, we have two kinds of archive. We have archive that was exactly what we are talking about. And I have researchers that worked in the United States, in Europe, in Israel, that find all the archive that we need for the film. And for the boxing part in Auschwitz, obviously there is nothing from Auschwitz. So what I did, I took boxers from the 30s, Jewish boxers from the 30s and from the 40s of the 20th century. So it will look alike, the same way of boxing, the same clothes they wear. So I took boxers, Jewish boxer from the 30s and the 40s, and I make illustration of Auschwitz boxing.
Yeah. One of the big themes in the film is destiny and character and luck. And what, you refer to the Jewish Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump as a film is really about its poignancy through its simplicity. And that's what resonated with me in particular about Noah, that he didn't think anything he was doing was so unique, and yet he recognized how unique everything that he did was. And my own dad, who passed away, now 10 years ago or so, who I was extraordinarily close with. And so, Iris, your smile that comes to your face when you talk about your dad, I feel the same with my own, was a huge sports fan. And I grew up in Brooklyn, a big Brooklyn Dodgers fan. And Branch Rickey, who was the general manager of the Dodgers at a time of unique social justice for America with Jackie Robinson's coming to the Brooklyn Dodgers, he said, luck is where character meets preparation. And it strikes me that really captures what went on in Uri's story, in Noah's story. And so I want to explore that a little bit. How did he feel about it? And maybe, Iris, you can talk a little bit about your dad's recollections about, did he really believe he was ordinary? Because it's hard to believe that somebody like him could believe he was ordinary and that he was just lucky. So how did he talk to you about that?
Every time with a big smile, with an optimistic view about everything, even if it was about my examining in school, even it was when we are traveling to some country. He put his bad experience, to a pink color, like I said, like I was a child. Everything was colored by good things, but by telling us that everything has a solution, because there is he didn't call this God, but he said that there is something very big about in this world that keep and doing miracle. So if I will believe that every time there is the end will be fantastic, it will be fantastic. And I have to admit that 4 years before I got a cancer, unfortunately. Now I'm okay, I'm healthy, but when I got this disease, it was a bad announcement to tell my dad, because this was really broken in his heart, because he was so hero. He was past a lot of things in his life. But when his daughter got this disease, I saw that he cannot suffer this. But like usually, even it was a sad, he told me two words. Now you have your war. You have to take a two boxer like I have in Auschwitz camp. And you put the boxer and he hold my two hands and he put his hands on my two hands like this. And he hugged this very hard and looked at me and said, you go to your trip. You will succeed. You will be fine. Don't worry. I did it. You did. You will do this. And I have to admit that I was shouting, I'm crying, and I told him, this is not Auschwitz here. This is cancer, blah, blah, blah. And he laughed and said, even cancer, I tell you what his father, my grandfather, used to tell him. We have luck. In the Kliger family, touch wood, we have some bagel, in the head, and someone is keeping us. Because if he didn't tell this like this to everyone who listened to him, he all the time said, I was lucky because there was thousands, millions that doesn't have a lucky. That was his view. I think at the last year of his life, he used to say, the luck is, I got so many lucky and so many miracles, so it should be finished. When he was very sick, he told me, this is the end of the luck. This is the end of the miracle. And maybe it's better like this. And he was 93 when he died, not 92. In all the Google items, it's a mistake. It was 93 almost. So I was very proud that at the end, at the last day, even he has a very bad disease and a lot of days that he was suffered while he traveling with Uri to his movie, to make the movie. Uri was now already that his healthy was not so well, but he was a really hero, fighting. And this is what I remember every day for him. Every time you ask me how he did it, he was smile and said, everything will be okay. Even Bibi, everything will be okay with the elections in United States, in Israel, with everything. And he was right.
And, no, it's very, very special, obviously. And Uri, did you get that same in working with, how long did you work on the film for? Let me ask you that. And how long did you?
I work on the film, the production took 3 years. Raising the money took 5 years. And I remember every time Noach asked me, Uri, what about the film? I hope you'll make a film on me, not in the memory of me. I said, Noach, I'm doing my best to raise money. But fortunately, we managed to raise the money, produce the film, and he was the guest of honor in the film and the film premiere. And we was lucky to have him with us. And further on, we traveled together to festivals and screening all over the world. And every time I was calling him, Noach, in 3-4 months, we have a festival in Paris, in Poland. He said, Yuri, you remember how old I am? I can't promise anything for 5 months from now. I said, Noach, you will be okay. You will never die. Nobody will ever be able to kill you. And he was laughing about that. And unfortunately, eventually he died.
And how much editorial oversight did he give to the project? And did he influence how you did certain things or how you told certain things in a direct way, or was it really just his inspiration?
He wanted. when I finished filming the film, he wanted to assist the editing. I said to him, Noach, no. Trust me. Trust me. I don't want you to see a frame until the film will be ready. Because if you're not professional, you can't see footage and see how it will be at the end. And I know that Noach, as a journalist, as an editor, he was very, very strict. And it was very, very, how do you say, no matter. I said, if you will attend the editing, it will change everything. I knew it. So I tell Noach, trust me, you will see the film at the end. And really, when the film was ready and the screening of the premiere, the light went down and my heart was pounding very hard. And the film ended and the light went up and Noach stood up and turned around. He was looking for me. And he said to me like this. I was relaxed. I knew I did the job well done and everything was okay. Well, it was very important to me to hear what Noach thought about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for anybody who's watched the film, one thing that that comes across is the notion that there are instances of luck. And so, for example, him stepping up and saying in the very beginning that he was a boxer when he really on some level had no business saying he was a boxer, for him confronting Mengele, for him I mean, there were just so many instances of good fortune, and yet on some level only someone with his character would have had the both courage and maybe chutzpah to actually step up the way he did and capitalize on that good fortune. And so I'm wondering, maybe you can give some sense of your experience with him, Uri, over the time of making the film, and I guess give an expression of how his character showed you how he was able to do what he did.
I will give an example of his character by telling a story of his mother. Because the mother of Noach is not in the film. Maybe in a few words that she was a very feminist and maybe the first feminist in France. But Noach's mother also was in Auschwitz. She was in Auschwitz too, Birkenau. And she survived. How she survived? The Nazis came to her barrack and say, who can sew? She automatically raised her hand. She didn't know anything about sewing. So she took her to another camp, and the next week, all her barrack was gassed. And she went to a Landsberg camp, and there she was taught by a Polish girl to sew the uniform of the Nazis. That's she survived. So that's the character that Noach was built when he raised his hand. He was asked, who among you is a boxer? He was 16 years old, only 16. Remember that. He raised his hand. How is a boxer? When he was boxing, there was war all around. When he was a boxer, but he raised his hand. He said, I'm a boxer. So he took him to the trials, and eventually he didn't have to show anything, because after the two first one, they know that they are boxers. So we understand that you are also a boxer, and that's how he managed. So it's every day, he said, Noach say, to survive Auschwitz, you don't need to be strong, you don't need to be a guy, you don't need to be tall or short, you just have to be lucky. If you're not lucky, you won't survive Auschwitz. And he was lucky.
Yeah. Well, please, Iris.
And another thing, lucky, and like he used to say, when he got to sleep, when they have time to sleep, without clothes in very cold temperature, he was dreaming about 2 brioche and croissant with the café au lait that he used to illusion, that imagine that he will woke up in the morning and his mother will put him this on the table and everything, all these terrible things that he passed will disappear. But it was not like this every morning. It was a war camp and very bad things that he passed. But I think the imagination with the things that he was lucky and big hope, I think, and the chutzpah, like you said, because you should be very chutzpah to continue situation that not everything was in the movie. I think Uri kept the movie to stay like in a way that my father wants that the movie will not be shocked, will not be very hard to look at this, because he wants that people will see this movie and not enjoy like this as a comedia, unfortunately, not this way, but not to be sad, to understand that he was lucky, and for the history, he was one of the lucky guys of the 6 million that they are not have lucky.
Yeah.
But if I used to speak about my father in another version, not just in the boxing story, and in the lot of situations that he told me, and I have to admit, and Uri, by the way, I'm not sure that we spoke about it, that the bad story, the really bad story, the worst, was before he passed away, when he was in a hospital in 2 months before he died, and the situation was not so easy with his healthy. Then all the bad memories came back again in the hospital, and it was awful to understand what's the things that he never spoke about them. He kept them so hard. So he used to tell story about himself, about the Holocaust, but I think he chose the story that from children, then adults can listen, getting exciting, and then not crying.
Yeah.
Because I have another example. My father-in-law, the father of Eli, was a Holocaust survivor. Different guy that never wants to speak about what happened there. And this was another story for another family, because in my family, it's all the time we spoke about Holocaust in a dining evening, Friday evening. In Eli family, it was not a secret, but while he started to speak about what happened, he was crying all the time, and he cannot suffer this next to his children and grandchildren. My father was the opposite. Just put him on a play, speak, tell, and he can never stop. That was amazing.
Well, certainly we're all the beneficiaries of that. There's a part in the film where where your dad says, anyone who wasn't there can't possibly know, can't understand, can't comprehend it. You can hear about it for hours, days, read books about it, but you'll never understand. And we sit here on a very momentous day in a lot of ways, in a day about hope and humanity. Here we are the night before the 82nd anniversary of Kristallnacht, and on a momentous day in the U.S. election calendar, and the sense of hope and optimism through tragedy is something that came across in the film very deeply, and through your father as that vessel, and so we're all the beneficiaries of the fact that he was willing to share that. I'm curious, Uri, maybe he spoke to you about this. What what role did he see himself having in telling the story, and beyond simply setting the stage for symbols of hope and courage and ordinary life and possibility? What importance did he place on telling the Holocaust story and being a vessel for remembrance?
I think
It was his life mission. It was his life mission to tell the story of the Holocaust. He had three things that he say, if I'll survive this Auschwitz death camp, three things I want to accomplish. One, to survive Auschwitz. Two, to tell about it. And three, to come to Israel, to the land of Israel. And he will succeed of the three targets that he set to himself. For him, it was his life mission. He all the time was telling the stories. He was researching the stories. He wrote about it in the newspaper. He researched it. He tell it to scholars. He tell it to students. He tell it to children and to head of states. And he did all of it with no money at all. He never got a dime out of it. He said, for me, I can't make money from the Holocaust. I will do it anytime, anyway, but I won't get a penny for it because this is my duty. This is my mission in life. I have to tell the story. I can't explain it, but I can tell it. And he told it until the last day of his life. I think 2 days before he died, he dedicated to Iris an article for the newspaper, no? Iris? So until his last day, he was telling the story.
But I have to say that he never spoke about this. This I published after his dying, that from a young guy that survived the Holocaust after the war, his plan was not to speak about the Holocaust. His plan was not to be a journalist or an historian about what happened in Holocaust. He doesn't want to speak anything about this period. He was a guy, a journalist for sport, Tour de France. Even your movie, Uri, you choose, I think, the best platform to make the film, that this was the house, the first house for him, not in Israel, the L'Equipe journal, because he started writing to L'Equipe journal in France, like a young guy that write about sports. And then when he get do Aliyah to Israel, he was also a reporter about sport, but he was not a member of the biggest newspaper in Israel, like later in Yediot Achronot. He was sport guy, write about everything, even Nadia Comaneci training. He knew everything about any branch in sport. But after years that he was couple years a journalist, like freelance, in 1959, his editor sent him, from the sport editor, sent him to Poland with the team of Israel of the football. And then something happened there. The consul of Israel that met him in Warsaw asked him, did you know that the museum of Auschwitz open here? Did you visit there already? So he did his hand like he did everything. He said, no, I don't want to listen. But what happened, the editor of Yediot Achronot in those years was Dov Yudkovsky. He was a survivor also. It was not a telephone, it's a teleprinter, something that from the past, that he got a message that this Mr. Klieger, young Mr. Klieger, doesn't want to come with this consul to see this museum. Why? And the editor was like punishment, tell my father, if you don't do this, you are not continue be a sport journalist in our newspaper. So this he didn't tell, but he go with this consul 2 hours driving, 2 hours and a half to Auschwitz. And then what happened there, that was איך אומרים מהפך? The turnover about what happened with his insisting not to speak about Holocaust. He got to this museum and he saw a small chair in nice garden, took a couple that's sitting there and make a picnic. And that was shocked him. He said, this is Auschwitz? No, no way. He came back to Israel and the editor asked him, what did you see in this museum, a new museum in Auschwitz? Tell me. He told me someday when I was younger that he didn't want to say exactly what he saw, but this editor put it like this: if you write about some Syria, about some article about what you have there, so you will be a member of our newspaper. And this, of course, my father was with a big ego. He liked this this job to be a member of Yediot Achronot journalist. So he published this article. The title was Auschwitz is not a picnic. And from this moment, 14 years after he threw away from the death of life, he started and never stopped to speak about Holocaust in his article, in his lectures, everything. That was his duty. But now after he died, I knew that for him, maybe it was a kind of psychologic, like therapy to speak and to be together to get over these awful things that he passed. Because I cannot explain how his life was opposite. He wants to be a journalist for lives in Israel, for the Bohema, from the sports, and he wasn't good in sport. He was also have a big career in sport, but the Holocaust was a way of life, a factory for what he's doing. And like Uri said, never with money, never.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to me, certainly, when you hear the title Box for Life, you think it's going to be a boxing story. And in some ways it's anything but. It's, sport is the arc that connects the 16-year-old Uri to Noah, to the 16-year-old Noah to the 93-year-old Noah. Sport is that arc, but you could have picked Uri any one of 7 chapters of his life to make the focus of the film. And I'm one thing I want to just explore with you a little bit is Zionism, because at 16 years old, when he was in fact brought to the camps, it was as a result of him already being part of the resistance. And there's a part in the recollection of in his recollection in the film saying that he knew that when he got out of the Holocaust, he was going to have a role in Zionism. And so I'm wondering where that connection came from. And did he speak about that at all? How was he such a Zionist at such a young age? And how did it continue to the point where, obviously he raised children there?
Well, when he survived the camp and arrived back to Belgium, he once saw a military truck with a David cross on it, and he approached to the car to look what a David cross is doing on a military car, and suddenly a few army guys start hitting him. He said, "Don't touch the car," and he saw a David cross on their clothes. And there was the Jewish brigade that was parking there. And he didn't know that there were a Jewish soldier that was fighting with the Allies against the Nazis. And when he heard about it, he said, I want to be a part of that. And that's how he wanted to become Zionist. He said, if for the Jewish people to overcome this tragedy, we have to establish our own states, Israel. And he became dedicated for Zionism. And eventually he was a crew member of the Exodus. He was a member of the Abricha, smuggling Jews from all around Europe to France, Italy, and Romania to board the illegal immigrant ship to come to Israel. And then he say, I will come myself. And then he changed his name with a false name. He went to Marseille to immigrate to Israel, but they knew about him and they say, we know that you are Mr. Klieger, Noah Klieger. We won't send you back to Belgium, but you will be in charge of one of the camps. And when was the time to board the ship, the vice commander of the Exodus said, I will make you a crew member. And the first incident with the captain of the ship, they told him, you will stand here, don't let anybody cross. And he saw a little guy with a hat of a sailor want to come. He said, no, you can't come. And he said, I have to come. He said, no, you won't come. I get an order that you won't come. And he was like the captain of Exodus. He seems like a 16 years old guy, but he was the captain of the ship. So that was Noach. When I saw the film to German students, college students, and journalists, and after the film is finished, they are overwhelmed. And they say how he can amuse himself and take jokes and tell things in humor about Holocaust. They were shocking. How he can amuse himself by telling stories about the Holocaust. They were shocking. So this is how you get connected to the story. But you don't think that it's something that happened, to others. This is an actual guy that tell you what he have been through. It was something in humor, something in pain, but the truth. So that's how all the Germans that saw the film say, when we saw this film, we understand. We don't just know about it, we understand. And after they saw the story of Noah, they understand what happened there.
Did you consider at all bringing in others to help tell his story, or was it just that with somebody posed a question Q&A just about how as a fellow documentarian said that it's so hard to allow one person, one interviewee to tell the entire story and still make it as compelling. And so did you think about bringing in any other people to help tell his story, or when you met him, when you knew him, it was just so riveting that you said, let's go with it?
At first, we thought maybe bringing some other guy to tell his story, but the main story that we told in the film, and mind you, what we tell in the film, it's less than 20% of what happened to Noah. If I will tell all Noah's story, I will need a series of 15 or 20 episodes like this. So what we picked something that was a highlight of the thing that he thought that was the most important things of his life. The journalism, the boxing, Exodus, and being a Zionist. But nobody can tell the story better than him. And all the guys that was with him were no longer alive. The two boxers, the Greek boxer, Jaco Razonen and Shlomo Aroch, were no longer alive. Alfred Nakash, that was one of the boxing team, was no longer alive. Young Peretz, that was the world champion Jewish world champion that was with him no longer was alive. So
Yeah.
there was nobody that you can take that will make input to the film than using only Noach. So
Yeah.
decided we will use only Noach, but he won't sit in his house in a couch and tell the story.
Yeah.
But I will take him to the places when the story occurred, so he will be more emotional. And indeed, he was very emotional when he get to the places. Sometimes when he tells the story in lectures and TV shows, he tell it automatically with almost no emotion. But when you took him to the places when the thing occurred, he said they took him from here when he was in Mukron, when the Nazis caught him in the same coffee when he was asked to lay down his trousers to see that he was a Jew. That's when he showed feelings. And that's what we did for the film. And nobody would have told it better than Noah himself.
Yeah. Well, I know time is getting short, and I could frankly, and I'm sure the people on the call could do this for hours and hours and hours and hours, really. I'm reminded of David Brooks, a renowned journalist for the New York Times, an editorialist who wrote a book called The Road to Character. And in the book, he talks about the difference between the eulogy you and the resume you. And the resume you is what you do. So the list of things you did, and I'm sure at the very top of Noah's list is father. But there are so many things that he did. And yet what's even more compelling is the eulogy Noah, which is how he did it, and the remarkable ordinariness, and yet the remarkable profound impact that his life had on so many, and the humility and never losing sight of the fact that he was standing on the shoulders of young Perez, and he was standing on the shoulders of so many without whom he wouldn't be here right now. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of all of us, Uri, for sharing the story the way you have, Ellie and Iris for being part of this, which just enriched it so much. My one regret is not having met him personally, but I feel like I did through this film. And so I want to thank you profoundly.
Thank you. This really has been a wonderful conversation. All of you, we are so deeply grateful for taking the time to spend with us and to share Noah's life with us. What a remarkable dad you had, Iris. What a remarkable man. And Uri, thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule. We're delighted to have had the enriching stories that really bring Noah's life more vibrantly alive. So thank you. And Brian, it's always a pleasure to have you lead us in conversation. As usual, you have a wonderful way of drawing out the most important and meaningful parts. So thank you. I want to thank everybody for joining us, being a part of the Jewish Film Festival this afternoon. We have 2 more wonderful films in the next 2 weeks. We hope that you join us for those and for other virtual and in-person programs from the Stanford JCC. And on behalf of the JCC and the festival, we thank you all for joining us. And I look forward to the day that I can see all of your smiling faces in the halls of our JCC. Uri, Iris, Ellie, Brian, thank you. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
The story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Keep well.
You as
Bye-bye.
well. Good health.
Chazak for Chazak.
Amen.
That is good.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.